all doing? Good. They were some fun stories. So I'm going to start my presentation with telling you a little bit about Alex. Now, when Alex first reached out to me, he had a pretty significant problem. While he found the whole finding a customer really quite difficult, the biggest trouble that he had is that when he sat down with the customer, everything seemed to go so well. And he'd share some great knowledge with them, and then they would say, "Can you just go away and put that together in a proposal for us? And then we'll get back to you." So what did Alex do? He ran home and he started typing away on his laptop to put the best proposal possible together. These could take him hours and hours and hours to do. And then he wouldn't hear from them. He'd sometimes contact them back and find out they went with somebody else. Other times, he would talk to them and discover that they decided that it was all just too hard, and they decided that they were just going to leave it for now. Can you imagine, as a salesperson, how horrible that is, to spend all of that time working with a customer, thinking they're going to move forward, and then all of a sudden finding out that they're just not? So he came to me and he said, "Matt, why exactly is this happening?" And I said, "Let me ask you a question, Alex. What I want to understand is what you're telling the client." And he said, "Well, when they tell me what problem they have or what solution they're looking for, I get excited. And I share with them all the different possibilities of all the different things that they can do. I say, you can try this solution, you can try this solution, you can try this solution." And then they look at me and they smile and they say, "That sounds great. Can you go away and do a proposal for me?" I said, "Alex, have you ever heard this saying before? Confuse the customer, lose the sale." Now, sure, I get it. What you're telling them sounds simple to you. But to these people, even the people that have experience in your industry, they're not doing it every day like you are. And because of that, they're getting overwhelmed with all of the options. For you, the devil is in the detail. For you, the devil is in the detail, the tech jargon. Now think about it when you're out with a customer. How much time do you spend talking about the jargon? The elements of the technology that you think the customer's really going to need to hear? I said, what I want you to do instead, I just want you to tell them a story. We all tell stories. Think about it. How many people here are married? Yeah? Fiancés, boyfriends, girlfriends, long time. How many times have you told the story about how you two met? And how much has it changed since you first started telling it? Think about it. When you first start telling that story, it's kind of bulky, right? You'll be telling it to the first person and you'll see that perhaps there's some parts that are not that exciting for the person you're telling it to. So you start to gloss over those things. Other things people start to smile and get really into. So what do? We start to embellish on those things. Soon, the story is this theatrical masterpiece. I tell this part, you tell that part, and at the end we smile, we hold each other's hands and we look at each other. We all know our part to play, don't we? We all get so great at telling stories, but in a business format, we don't. We get stuck in that jargon. I said, what I want you to do, Alex, is I want you to tell a story of a customer that you've worked with just like them, that you achieved an amazing result for. That's all I want you to do. Just tell a story. I said the great thing about stories, especially for Alex, what I didn't tell you about Alex is Alex actually had a chronic stutter. Can you imagine having a chronic stutter that gets exacerbated when you're uncomfortable? When are we most uncomfortable? Especially if we're introverted, when we're selling, right? So his stutter got worse and worse, and I said the great thing about telling a story is that studies out of Princeton highlight that what's called neurocoupling happens. Basically, it creates artificial rapport. So if you're on a telemarketing phone call trying to get an appointment, or if you're sitting down with a customer and you're starting to tell a story, especially someone like Alex who struggled to get comfortable, two things happened. One was he created artificial rapport with the person he was talking to, and two, he started to feel more comfortable because the brain chemistry starts to synchronize. I also said, all this jargon stuff you're talking about, you do realize no one's going to remember any of that, right? I mean, think about how many times you've been with a customer, explained all the details of all the things you're going to do, and you come back next time and they're like, just remind me about all of them. They don't remember, do they? But people remember 22 times more information when embedded into a story. If you don't believe me, an example I give is if I was to ask you to remember chairs, porridge, and beds, a year from now I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you about those 3 items. Are you going to remember? What about the order that they were in? But if I told you the child's tale of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, not only would you be able to tell me that she sat in some chairs, she ate some porridge, and she slept in some beds, you'd also be able to tell me the exact order that it happened in. I said, but one other thing that's going to be absolutely powerful for you is stories actually give you an unfair advantage. Here's why. See, so many people, especially in tech sales, we're communicating with the logical mind. Here's what you're looking for. Here's what we can provide. Here's the solution you need. Here is all of the things we're going to implement. What do you think? The problem is we're speaking to the logical mind. Especially when we're talking to a customer for the first time on a phone, we stay very much in the tech. And the problem with that is the logical mind's listening and thinking, that's not going to work for me. Maybe I don't know, I don't think that'll work for me. Do you know, I'm kind of running out of time here. Like, can you hurry things along? The emotional mind, however, loves stories. They hear a story and they're like, story time. And they just listen. And here's the other really cool thing. See, when you tell a story, it short-circuits the logical mind and you speak directly to the emotional mind. And it doesn't listen to any of the details, it just assumes all of that to be factual. And it's listening for the moral of the story. Now, the moral of the story is that the customer had a successful outcome working with you. And because of that, so can they. But because they don't question any of the detail, I mean, think about it. Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Did you ever question whether or not bears had beds, they ate porridge, and they broke chairs? Right? It's just not something we worry about. I said, for Alex, one of the things I really want you to do, though, because you've got this chronic stutter, because you really struggle in the whole sales activity, I want you to practice your stories. I want you to write them down. I want you to write them down and learn them. I want you to be able to say these in your sleep. I want you to be able to close your eyes and be able to tell the entire story. And his response to me was, Matt, you mean like a script? He goes, no, I don't want to do a script. I mean, I want to be authentic with my clients. I don't want to sound robotic. Now, how many of you have heard telemarketers that have called you and gosh, they sound robotic? They're just reading off a piece of paper. He goes, I don't want to be like that. I said, Alex, what's your favorite movie? For him, it was Gangs of New York. Leonardo DiCaprio. Anyone seen it? It's an amazing movie. And doesn't Leonardo DiCaprio really just capture that person? The whole time I'm watching it, I'm, oh my God, this guy is that person. How does he do that? You know, he's reading from a script, right? This is a story. He's learned this script, but here is the difference. The person that sounds robotic is reading off a piece of paper and they've read it probably once or twice or a few times. Leonardo DiCaprio will learn the entire storyline. He will learn the entire script. He will take it on and he'll become that person. He'll be able to say it in his sleep, and then he delivers that script. I said, what I want you to do is not read like a robot. These are your stories. And because of that, you should be able to share them. I just want you to go in prepared. So he started to go through the process of learning these stories. He picked 3 stories. I said, don't overcomplicate it. I mean, most of your customers probably only have 3 objections, and most of your customers are only really looking 80% of the time for 3 specific types of solutions. So because of that, just focus on 3 stories first. Right? Let's not overwhelm ourselves. Just learn those. So he wrote these stories down, his own stories. And then he learned them. And then he started to use them with customers. Now, Alex had struggled for a long time. I mean, he was a 6-figure business. His dad worked in the business. His wife worked in the business. He had a staff member and an office space. You can imagine there's probably not a lot of money to go around, right? But because he tried a script, first thing that happened is he felt more natural. He felt like he could be more genuine and more present. He felt because he had an understanding of what he was going to say, he wasn't getting stuck in his head trying to think out the technical detail. And it just made him feel so more relaxed. And because of that, in 7 months, they became almost $1 million business. Now, how much work does that sound like? I mean, we're talking about writing down stories, learning them, practicing them, to the point where we can say them in our sleep. It sounds like a crazy amount of work. But think about how much time Alex was spending going around writing proposals, going to see clients, trying to chase up new clients. Think about how much work he was spending getting on the phone, trying to get somebody to just listen to him in the first place. How much time are you spending chasing clients, following up with them, writing these in-depth proposals, bringing in the solution consultants and taking up all of their time, and potentially not getting the sale because you don't have these well-prepared stories that help the customer know that you can deliver. And not only that you can deliver, that you've done it so many times before. Now, when I used to sit down with my sales team and I told them that they could achieve this, they said, Matt, it sounds like a lot of work and I can't really remember these stories. I mean, it's too hard. I said, have you ever seen people perform Shakespeare off Broadway? These people aren't even getting paid. They're just doing it for their opportunity to get recognized. Now, has anyone seen Shakespeare? I studied it in school. They say it's English, but I can't make out most of the words. These are stories, they're in English, they're your stories. All you've got to do is trust in the fact that you can remember them. I mean, if they can remember pages and pages of Shakespearean text, you can remember a few lines of a story. Now, when I told my sales team this, they're like, come on, Matt, you're kind of a little bit of a sales wizard. See, the trouble is, when people see me speak from stage, or they see me the way I sell now, they go, well, you're probably one of those natural salespeople, those natural people that have that gift of gab. It's easy for you. Most people don't see me the way I once was. Gosh, if I had one of those little heart rate monitors on my wrist right now, we'll see what happens. Right? I was horribly introverted in high school. Due to a reading issue that I had a reading speed of a 6th grader. I got diagnosed with Irlen syndrome at the age of 16, and thank goodness I did, because then I could start the process of learning to read. Not instantly cured, got to start the process of learning. So I worked really hard in high school, crazy hard, and I managed to get myself into the top 20% of the state when I graduated. But I was exhausted. My family knew it. I convinced them that I was going to take a year off school just to figure out what I wanted to do. I mean, I had no idea. I was so focused on just getting through those 2 years, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And not only that, I was really self-confident. Let me show this slide for like a second. This was my face back then. And now I'm going to change the slide. Now, that was my sister's wedding. And I say that I'm getting married in September, and I keep getting people come up, I did not know you were married twice. But can you imagine, as a brother, you want to do everything you can to make your sister's wedding amazing, don't you? Yet as a brother, there was nothing I could do. That photo with that face was going to be on every photo, on every mantelpiece in my family forever. Now, thanks to the people in the technology industry, they do amazing things with Photoshop, but they won't let me change it. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I made the decision to take a job at a real estate agency. Now, I know what you're thinking, guy at the front selling. No, I was the guy in the back office, hiding away, doing data entry with a look on my face saying, don't talk to me, I'm here to find myself for the year. About 3 weeks into that job, my boss comes up to me and he says, Matt, I've got some bad news. The company's closing down, you're out of a job. I worked there 3 weeks. Now I've got to look for a new job, and in Australia, for people that don't know Australia very well, it's summer and Christmas at the same time. We go on holidays on the 20th of December, and nobody comes back till the 15th and 20th of January. If you were running your own business, even if you're a big corporation, how many people are you hiring a couple of weeks before Christmas? No one's thinking about hiring. They're thinking about getting the work they need to get done complete before they go on this long break. The only jobs I could get were in commission-only sales. Now, luckily, I went to the first interview I went to wearing a suit. And they put me in the business team because I was the only one that wore a suit. Now, I was terrified of the whole process of selling. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it, but I did know I promised my father I would support myself. Now, my manager was really kind. He said, we just throw mud up against the wall and see what sticks. Sounds like a fun saying until you realize you're the mud, right? So after 5 days worth of product training and not a single second of sales training, I get thrown on this road. Now, this is called Sydney Road in Melbourne, Australia. There's over 1,000 doors on each side. And I felt like that was good, right? Because a lot of people were going to tell me, no, why not have far to walk? So I went to walk into the first door, and then I had this realization. No one taught me how to sell. I didn't know what to say. So I took a deep breath, and I walked in, and I was politely told to leave. In the next door, I was less politely told to leave. Then I was sworn at, and then my personal favorite, I got told to go and get a real job. It's the only job I could get. Door after door, I just kept going. Until the 93rd door, I made my first sale. I remember I made $70. I was ecstatic for about 45 seconds. Then I had this realization, I've got to do this again tomorrow. And the next, every single day for the rest of the year. That was not okay. I had to find another way, but I had a reading speed of a 6th grader. I couldn't exactly pick up a Brian Tracy or a Zig Ziglar book. It would have taken me the year to read them, let alone apply them. But what I did discover was this cool new technology that was coming out called YouTube. Now, this may surprise you. It surprised me a lot back then. There's a lot more on there than just cat videos. So I learned the process of selling, and I had to convince myself that sales had to be a process, because otherwise my year was going to suck. And then every day I got better at the next element, and the next element, and the next element of the sales process. Well, within the space of 6 weeks, the number of doors to a sale went down from 93, down to 72, down to 48, down to 30, down to 18, down to 7, down to 3. About 6 weeks into it, my manager pulls me into his office, and I thought I was in the world of trouble. He had this puzzled look on his face, and I'm like, oh, what have I done wrong? And he said, Matt, we're a little bit shocked by this, but I have to tell you, you're the #1 salesperson in the sales company, which just happened to be the #1 sales company in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, fast forward a little bit longer, outside a small hiccup, I got made a manager, but no one taught me how to train. So my whole team started, 3 days later, they all quit. But I figured that out watching YouTube videos. And then I got promoted about 7 times in about 12 months. Then I got overconfident, and I went out into business for myself. Over about a decade, I've been responsible for about 5 multi-million-dollar success stories. But more importantly than that, I went from scared to sell, really terrified to sell, to teaching hundreds how to do it. Now, through The Introvert's Edge, which is bestseller in a lot of places these days, I get to teach thousands. Just to be blatantly honest, I don't work for Oracle. I don't sell it every day. The reason why I remember it is what I do is I write down this story, word for word. Then I break it into chapter headings, right? This part, then this part, then this part. And I put it on a piece of paper, and I'll show you, because I was practicing this just before I came up. And it's a series of chapter headings. That's it. I can remember the whole story that way. Why? Because once I have the chapter headings and I memorize those, people remember 22 times more information when embedded into a story. So now I can draw upon this story whenever I need it, and as salespeople, so can you. Now, a lot of times when I talk about this, people that are brand new say, but I don't have any stories. What am I going to do? I'm just getting started. I don't have 30 years of experience. Well, in the management meeting this morning, I gave an example of another company that had a whole series of fresh salespeople that were afraid to get on the phone or didn't have that level of experience. And what we did is we drew the stories from the management team so that they could use the stories. I mean, you don't have to say, I had this customer. You can say, we had this customer. Think about how many stories you guys have. Chris shared just these. This morning I was in a presentation and you showed me a whole series of slides of logos of all these successful stories. You have so many. All you've got to do is say, we had this customer. We as Oracle had this customer. Here's what they were going through. And here's the solution we provided. And the good news is we have 3 pre-written stories for you. For the last month, I've been interviewing people from Oracle and putting together 3, of which this is one of them, of stories that you can start to utilize. But don't stop there. The managers have now been trained on how to do this, how to go about making sure that they can create great stories for each one of your departments and each one of these divisions. And I think this is the chair, these are the group. of high performers, right? Are those chairs comfortable? They're pretty good. If you want to be sitting here instead of there in the next meeting, then learn the stories. I mean, who would have thought that someone like Alex could go from struggling to get 6 figures and a crippling stutter to creating nearly $1 million business in 7 months? If he can do that, if I can go from terrified to selling to teaching thousands how to do it, if I can get up in front of a room like this and not freak out, mind you, my heart rate monitor might be still a little bit high, you can definitely do this. You've just got to put in the work. The great news is I spent 6 weeks learning it, and it sucked. It was like 8 hours of selling, 8 hours at home practicing. Right? That wasn't a fun 6 weeks, but I've taken that with me every single day for the rest of my life, and I have benefited from it. You can learn these stories in a matter of days, and then anytime a customer gives you an objection, you can then roll off one of these stories straight off the cuff, and the customer will diffuse logically and listen at an emotional level, and they're going to give you more than 8 seconds that you probably get on the phone right now. They'll listen to a minute, minute and a half, 2-minute story, and then they'll hear the moral. We're going to hold your hand the whole way. We offer a diverse solution that just no one else can compete with. And a lot of times now, we're actually cheaper. Who would have thought? Market leader in the technology actually might be cheaper too. Makes it a no-brainer, doesn't it? And the only way they're going to listen is through story.